SatAM Season 3, Issue 3. We start out with Bunny and Rotor sneaking into Robotropolis and hollowed out robots. I have a question, how did they ever get access to those in the first place? Especially before Chuck became a spy. We never saw Sonic defeating any robots for some reason, so that can't be it. Is Rotor just perfect at replicating the robot designs in his lab? Rotor does excited technobabble on his invention, and Bunny is a ditz as usual by immediately being bored of the science talk and telling him to shut up with her hand on her cheek. She's definitely the brawn over brain character, but I haven't seen her use her brawn. Is she ever gonna do it in this comic? She has to be one or the other. She's not going to be using either. What's the point? I like that Rotor reacts realistically to her by being embarrassed and laughing nervously instead of not reacting at all. Then after he says this should do it, Sally asks Nicole how the translation's coming, and then Sonic tells her that she's wasting her time because they should be out fighting Snively. Sally naturally points out that the information on the scroll could help them fight against Naugus easier. Shouldn't that have been an obvious conclusion to Sonic? Instead, Sonic shows rivalry with Knuckles before even knowing it's him because he shows paranoid suspicion against him, thinking that his scroll is a lie with no evidence. Nicole translates the scroll with her bullshit powers, and I guess I should have expected this. The scroll Knuckles gave to them just recites the SA1 chant about chaos energy. Oh, it's also got new changes to its lines. Power forged by the fires of time, shapeless as wind, and shifting as water. The scroll is determined to be a riddle. Why would the person writing the scroll make it a riddle? That's very inconsiderate. Sonic says that Rotor and Bunny will be back soon with the info dump on the big thing Sonic and Tails found. The machine it must be. After I see Ixis sitting on the floor looking kind of vulnerable, I briefly get a bad flashback to how much of a wuss Flint turned him into with his stupid sickness from wizards and his head illness. I take a deep breath again, and see that he's just being calm and calling Snively's message an interruption. So he's a competent villain. He asks for his help testing the Chaos Eye, and Ixis teleports to the command center, startling him. So he can teleport outside of the void too. Snively says that the Chaos Eye, a very cool name for a Chaos Energy Detector. Much better than like scanning apparatus or Chaos Energy Detector. The Chaos Eye needs Ixis to go outside and see if his magic can be detected by it. For some reason Ixis is offended at this, and Snively almost gets punched for reminding him about their deal again, finally having realistic consequences, with Ixis getting tired of it. Ixis threatens him up close, asking him if he remembers their deal, and reveals that he disposed of Robotnik and would do the same to him if he didn't live up to his end of the bargain. I guess he contacted him with his void portal machine to make that deal. I like that Rotor mentions he made sure to photograph every angle of the machine to figure out its exact design. They really thought of everything. He figures out it's a scanning apparatus just from seeing the outside of it. This is almost no better than Sonic Rider Zero Gravity, where Wave makes fun of Tails' airport just from seeing the outside of it. I mean, is his camera a scanner like Nicole? Sonic doesn't think it's a big deal at first because the machine's not a weapon, and Rotor looks at him annoyed for once and says the machine could find rings, which gets Sonic worried. Chuck says that it could even track the Power Stone, even though it disappeared. I guess it actually just teleported to another part of the world because it felt like it. Rotor also assumes that Snively intends to turn the machine into a rocket ship. Again, how would he know this just by seeing the outside of it? It could look like anything. He could have designed it to look like a pineapple and it'd still be the internal structure that really matters. Rotor guesses that they have to make their move against the machine tonight, and Sonic puts his hand on Sally's shoulder to reassure her. After Ixis shows impatience, they activate the Chaos Eye, and I smile in amusement at Ixis' big frown, and am hoping that it's worth all this trouble, since after he complained about being his guinea pig, he's doing it anyways. Predictably, the device works, and the hero saw the light from the device, showing consequences to seeing it. I point out consequences so much because there's so many times when consequences aren't shown in Sonic, like all over Unleashed and in SatAM. After Sonic runs around to lure some flying machines to him, Sally says the sky's been freed up and wants to go. Ixis figures out that this is a diversion because Sonic doesn't go to Robotropolis alone. Snively tells Ixis that his skills are best used for capturing Sonic, naturally since Sonic's the bigger threat, so he teleports away, turning himself into a shadow. Bunny uses her super strength for once to slam something closed as their friends get in somewhere dark, and she goes to reunite with Rotor and Sally, who want to lay out the explosives in a triangle across the wall to do the most damage. I like that extra bit of detail. This reminds me of the pre-Flynn comic where people may have bitched that they were explaining too much, but that was just brilliant writing showing the writers actually cared enough to think that deeply into it. And this comic is doing the same thing when it has moments like this. Rotor says that each teammate will take a different side of the wall. As Sonic keeps luring cameras to him, he eventually realizes Ixis hasn't shown up to bother him and gets a bad feeling. Predictably, Ixis showed up to Sally, being more genre savvy compared to Snively, and he brainwashes Bunny, making her punch Rotor in the chest. Ixis tells Sally that he's just using Snively, and he's not seeing the benefit to using him, and yet he hasn't left him already. And he wonders if he and Sally will make better partners. However, she doesn't trust him, probably because he's smirking evilly like a complete moron. See, before this, I was thinking that he could convincingly be affable and manipulate Jeffrey into trusting him and Archie Sonic. But then I saw the smirk. Although maybe Sally should have agreed because it'd be beneficial to have a powerful wizard like Ixis working with her against Snively. She uses Nicole to try to shoot a laser at him, sending steam from some pipes. Wait, Nicole can shoot lasers now? Does that mean she can fight robots? That they finally have a method of destroying those things like we do in literally every Sonic game in continuity? No, I'm sure this will all be forgotten about. I'm sure the robots are too tough for the lasers to beat them somehow. Fortunately, Bunny is released from brainwashing. I guess because Ixis was distracted. And the hero slip away from his view. As I think about how the comic Ixis would have gotten around this by either turning into steam, or, well, I guess he did remove the steam since he was able to talk to Sally again. Its offer concerns the fate of the king. What Sonic didn't know was how Ixis used the Doomsday energy to escape the void. Oh, this better be good. His studies revealed using the energy tunnel connecting the void to Mobius to escape made him crystallize, so he made a spell that would let him target any person on Mobius and switch places with them. And he switched places with Robotnik. Okay, Robotnik was still in another dimension from him. He threatens her because if she doesn't help him, her father will remain trapped with his worst enemy in the void. And we're not even going to see like a few panels of him dealing with that. Sally silently leaves, not even considering helping him, without Ixis even saying, I want you to help me find the Chaos Emeralds, and then she'd have a really good reason to say no. And Ixis thinks she's foolish. I don't really blame him at this point. I think she's only leaving to spite him because he's evil. Ixis thinks he'll win either way, looking over at a clock or some kind of timer. I really love that we're seeing Ixis Naugus as a proper villain in a proper story arc finally for the first time since Return of the King and beyond. This is how I would actually imagine Ixis as a major villain to be, minus the working for Snively part. After Bunny briefly wonders if Sally's crying, it turns out that Ixis left the bombs running to spite Snively, and they just get cornered by SWAT bots, meaning that the heroes will have a hard time escaping with their lives. Sally, why don't you just use Nicole's laser on these guys? Rotor justifies that this is the only opening out of here that he could find, and Sonic comes in the nick of time with an improvised train to knock away some robots, and says all aboard, being the Sonic I love because he's being charmingly nice in a serious situation, while still having some moments of taking things seriously, rather than overdoing it. Sonic saves them all with a super speed and says, "Thanks for riding the Sonic Express! Please come back anytime." Bunny shows her adventure-loving side, being all happy that they took out the tower and lived. I think I would like Bunny a lot more if she was a thrill-seeker, if that was her personality. She would feel less bland that way. But Sally's predictably the downer, worrying about her father. Snively is naturally furious that his Chaos Eye was destroyed, and he yells at Ixis for letting it happen. Well, Ixis had said earlier that he could just use his magic to find Chaos Energy, so maybe he thinks that he doesn't need it. Snively stands tall over Ixis briefly by some sort of extendable crutches, asking who's the little man now. I love how surprised Ixis looks, like he's intimidated, but I have to wonder why he doesn't hit his head on the ceiling. Inevitably, Snively gets punched for calling him a failure, and Ixis reasserts his own authority over him, saying that now Snively needs his magic to find the emeralds. It's like Snively is so desperate to feel like he's the one in charge in Robotnik's position, like getting revenge for all of the times that he was the lackey by mistreating a lackey himself, that he's completely failed to learn from Robotnik's mistakes, that abusing the lackey can backfire on him. Even though he was a lackey, he doesn't learn this lesson when his own lackey's a powerful wizard. It's so stupid of him to do. Is Snively supposed to be this stupid? This episode was about the Chaos Eye being destroyed after just one issue of having a badass name, because Ixis didn't get rid of the bomb set by Sally, and Sonic, being suspicious because Ixis wasn't going after him, goes to the only other place he could be and saves his friends. This independent decision by Ixis was to cleverly force Snively to rely on him for tracking the emeralds, making sure that he has the power in the relationship. Finally, Ixis doesn't work as a snarky lackey, he's a powerful wizard, and Snively's just some try-hard mortal in a chair, looking pathetic compared to him. As much as I like getting to see him being the major villain role for a change, with a new purple cape and everything, it just doesn't have the effect I would want it to, or expect it to, because it's not him alone, it's Ixis with them. Although, I guess Snively was just the major villain all alone, like he'd be just doing the same things that Robotnik would be doing anyways. So he can't be alone and solo. He needs to have a lackey of his own, and at that point the lackey's always going to overshadow him. And I appreciate not having a pointless side story for this issue this time around, so we can have the main story be the length that it really benefits from, having all the plot progression there. I also like that Ixis punched Snively for mistreating him. We're seeing the realistic consequences of Snively not learning the right lesson from his own life experiences, that mistreating your subordinate will backfire on you. Also, it's great that the writers remember that, yeah, the king is trapped with Robotnik now. That must be really annoying for him. Though not nearly as annoying as being with Ixis, who could shapeshift his head for amusement all day since he doesn't have a TV or anything.